Hello guys and welcome to the next part of the series of What If Issei also had a persona. If you like the video, please give it a like, share it and subscribe to my channel. Now let's start the video. Chapter 4. I do not own the Persona series or High School DxD. Everything belongs to their respected owners. Akira began to find himself in a familiar place as his eyes began to open. He last remembered going to sleep after going over the events that had happened from the past hours. After that, he went to bed to sleep. But now he woke up, his back on a solid surface that was not the mattress that he once felt before entering his slumber. Slowly pushing himself up and looking down, the dark, yet blue, coloring glared at him as he began to get back up. Sitting on the flat surface that he once laid on, he rubbed his face. Throwing his legs to the side, he started to stand up to get a better look of his surroundings. Hearing a sound coming from his right, he slowly craned his head in that direction and remembered the bars and jail cell that he once occupied before. But just like before, as he last remembered, the steel cage was wide open. Even with the barrier gone, Akira only walked up to the doorway and did not pass the frame. A few meters away from his cell, a single man sat in a chair with a table set up in front of his being. His legs were extremely long and skinny, to a point of a description of lanky, which could also be said for his arms. He kept his arms on the table as he was constantly hunched over while his chin rested on his hand. The man's age was rather elderly with an extremely long nose, pointed ears, and bulging, bloodshot eyes. "Welcome to the Velvet Room," Igor greeted with that usual smile that nearly looked sinister. Eyes were nearly popping out of the man's sockets with every passing second. The long-nosed being chuckled in amusement. "You were much more remarkable than before when we parted ways. It becomes the most of rare occasions when we make contact with a guest after their journey. Or nothing more than a game for you." Akira stared for a bit, trying to think up of something to say. Listening to Igor's words, he took notice of the last bit of the man's final sentence. After their journey, with the tap of light footsteps, Akira slowly poked his head out of the cell and looked down to see yet another familiar face. A young girl stared back at him with her golden eyes. With her short stature, it was accompanied by long platinum hair. She wore a blue Victorian dress, and a stylish matching headband with white butterfly ornaments and yellow roses. Of course, Lavenza nodded her head, keeping a book tucked under her arm since she was stationed around that spot from the beginning. "Did you think that you were the only one? We have had many guests throughout time," Igor began, gaining their attention once more. "Only a small handful of others have shown themselves not to be any stranger to the Velvet Room after their adventure. But perhaps that will be for another time. Who knows, maybe you've already seen them before. Can you tell me why I'm here?" Akira asked, still deciding not to walk out of the confines of the cell he was in despite being allowed the freedom to wander around. "I thought that my time with this place was done, not that I hate it." "It is understandable to why you think so." Igor nodded his head slowly. "As I have said before, it is a rare opportunity for one to be invited to the Velvet Room after their journey. But, you are perhaps one of the most interesting guests so far. Which is why we have brought you here due to your current standpoint." "Current?" Akira muttered, putting a hand to his chin. "You're talking about the devils and fallen angels." "Devils, angels, fallen angels, gods, all mythology within reality." The long-nosed male listed slowly yet in a captivating manner. "I shall tell you now, this is not a game like before. Instead, this is a series of events that shall unfold by each action done by you and the people which you have chosen to stay with. Nothing but supernatural powers shall be at work during your journey." Lavenza took another step forward, now ending up in front of the guest of the current Velvet Room. "You have already chosen to place your faith in humanity once before. Feel free to gain strength from its figures." Grabbing the book under her arm, she held it out with both of her small hands. As Akira stared, Igor chuckled. "I suggest taking a hold and reading it." "Trickster." The boy looked up when he was referred to as his nickname by those related to the Velvet Room. It is nearly never seen that a guest hold his or her own compendium in their own hands. "You have summoned your original self before, correct?" Lavenza asked. Akira looked at the girl's features. "You mean Arson, correct?" Lavenza nodded her head in confirmation. "Though what you name mementos and the metaverse are gone, your abilities still exist. Perhaps due to the amount of supernatural energy. When you read this, you will be granted the strengths that you have once wielded. Not as a wild card, but as the trickster that you have been titled with. A character that always has something up their sleeve when the time shall arise. Looking at the book that was being presented to him, the black-haired male slowly reached over and took the book into his hands. As soon as the Velvet Room attendant released her grip, Akira nearly dropped the compendium in complete surprise at how heavy it was. Just managing to cup it into his arms, Akira placed a single finger onto one of the random pages of the book and opened it up. As soon as he opened it though, he saw nothing but blank paper. Something took into immediate effect though as a single white mask shot up and struck him straight in the middle of his head. As Lavenza caught the compendium before it could hit the ground, Akira clutched his head once again. He heard laughter. It wasn't his. It was not Igor's. It was not Lavenza. It was Arsene. Once more, the persona within him laughed with complete amusement. But the sudden feeling was more of a headache rather than constant pain. He could feel strength and power that dwelled within him rise once again. The laughter grew louder as well. As the feeling grew, the sounds of Arsene's amusement increased in volume as well. Within a flash of blue and white fire after a few seconds, Akira recovered immediately and recognized himself in his usual Phantom Thief attire. But that was not all. Before, when he fought Rainier, he only had his simple knife and gun. Now, it was different. The gun he held was bigger yet could still fit and was weighed perfectly in his hand. The black color followed by the red veins creeped from one end of the barrel all the way to the other end with the colors pulsing as if alive. Under the barrel however was a design that would be disturbing to some. Such a look resembled a human spine and small ribcage but with black metal solidifying the spaces between the metal bones until it curved itself to form a guard around the trigger. He remembered using such a weapon and the great persona of the Star Arcana used to create it. The Tyrant pistol was given form thanks to Lucifer. But the blade in his other hand was much different than what he had ever used. It was nearly too big to be considered a knife but still not long enough to be called a short sword. It almost looked like it was made of obsidian due to its color. The blade nearly looked like a cutlass with its look alone due to its appearance and size. A guard in the shape of a skull around the grip of the handle but cut itself off near the bottom to make space for the hand to move as the hilt seemed to grow from the skull and created the image of two horns. The blade was straight at first, but the last quarter curved itself. A peculiar part of the blade was that the back of the weapon looked slightly rough, almost being comparable to a human spine painted black. The presence from the melee weapon felt massive and familiar. Satanel, Akira said to himself. Yes, Igor answered with a nod. The persona of the ultimate rebel sealed inside the weapon which shall be known as Paradise Lost. A name which is almost appropriate. Am I safe to assume that you are wondering why you have only Arsene? Akira didn't answer as that was what he was thinking. Lavenza however began to remind the man. Nothing but inhuman beings shall become people or things that you shall meet along your journey should you choose to walk the path. You have chosen to represent humanity. Is it not logical for your persona to be such? He only stared at the woman who stared back with an equal expression. Looking at the two weapons in his hands, he could still hear Arsene's laughter which has now turned into cackling. Wouldn't have it any other way. He answered with a roguish smirk. But then it occurred to him. What about my friends? Who knows what will happen? Lavenza stated as she gently pushed Akira back further into his cell. Slowly as he could feel himself drift away, Igor's voice reached his ears. This may be the last time we see each other. But if not, until we meet again. Take a break. Hey, are you okay? You seem to be a bit out of it. Akira peeked down into his desk to see Morgana taking shelter in the small space. The feline seemed to be staring with a slightly concerned expression. Is it because of your visit to the Velvet Room? He had told everyone of his experience. Luckily, they had just managed to play it cool as they had neared the gates and grounds of Kuo Academy. Apparently, their conversation from last night as well had been brought into the morning with the subject of the Velvet Room added in. Thankfully, Akira managed to put a stop to most of the questioning due to even him not really having any more ideas of what was to come. I'm fine, Akira said as he began scribbling more notes that he could think of. But those notes weren't related to the subject he had just sat though. Such writing was already done in a separate part of the notebook he was using. I'm just trying to figure something out. They were actually related to what Rias said to him yesterday. The red-haired devil had revealed that her peerage wasn't the only peerage in Kuo Academy, meaning there was at least one more. There could be several based on the vague information that she had provided. The fact that there could be more devils and the possibility that they might not be as friendly as Rias forced Akira to think about how to approach such a situation if it were ever to arise. So far as he could narrow it down, lesser devils weren't likely to be too far from their king. What that meant was that there was a likeliness that they would all be in the same club or they grouped together. Sadly, that narrowed it down to everyone but him and the Phantom Thieves. Is it about what Grimori-san said? Morgana asked, wanting to take a peek upwards. Akira however lowered the notebook and flipped it around so that the animal could read it. He hummed before nodding and allowing the human to bring his book back up. Well, let's start over. Grimori said there was a peerage, meaning that there is more than one devil. The king is probably the leader of the group or club he or she is in. If they have a queen then she. Akira kept quiet and trailed off at the end for a second. Or he will probably be next to the king more often than not. He noted this from what he's seen from Rias-en. Akano. Who could that possibly be though? Maybe. At that moment, Akira noticed a shadow looming over his desk from the front and luckily not the back, otherwise Morgana would have been noticed. When he looked up, he was pleasantly surprised to see Tsubaki Shinra standing there, looking down at him with a stony gaze. Tsubaki Shinra was a third-year Kuo Academy student, fourth most popular girl in the high school section, and the student council vice president. In other words, a big deal. Can I help you? Akira asked politely. No reason to be rude, especially to the vice president. That as well as they were in the middle of the classroom where they were currently gaining more and more eyes staring at them. You are Akira-kun, correct? Tsubaki responded with a serious face. That depends. Akira answered with a straight face. Is he in trouble? He shouldn't have said that. Luckily, the girl didn't seem to be too angry or unimpressed. Please follow me, she requested, simply ignoring the question. The student council president wishes to see you. Now, she gestured towards the door with a gesture before waiting out in the hall. Sure. Akira nodded his head, seeing that there was no other choice anyways. Packing his things, he allowed Morgana to slip into the bag just before partially zipping it closed. Standing up, he looked at the person who sat in front of him. Just like in Shujin, it was Anne luckily as the blonde girl watched him with curious eyes. As everyone else had their eyes on him due to the vice president of the student council asking him to walk with her, he knew that he could perhaps act a bit subtle. Tapping his right pocket a few times while walking, he then raised his hand to adjust his glasses before he was out of the classroom to follow Tsubaki. Anne was the only one who even suspected such actions as she pulled her phone out of her right pocket and began to text someone. Take a break. The entire walk to the student council room was silent. As Akira followed behind Tsubaki, the only thoughts he could muster were ones that made him wonder what happened to make him have to come to such a room once again. Did Ryuji do something again and he was somehow involved with it? Akira-kun. The boy blinked. Yes, Shinra-san, please, Tsubaki is fine, she stated without looking back at him. If you are wondering, you are not in any sort of trouble. Akira only nodded his head. But that easily left a single question open. Then what was he being called in for? Taking out his phone, he had a feeling that this was another conversation that should probably be heard from by everyone else. Luckily, Futaba created a recording app that was installed on any one of their phones. All they had to do was get the girl to activate it from her own phone and words would be recorded as long as a call was playing out. There was still the issue of cell phone bills, but he hardly used the calling feature and had unlimited texts. At that moment, Akira and Tsubaki arrived at a pair of large and ornate double doors. Seconds later, Tsubaki pulled them open to reveal the student council room which, in Akira's opinion, looked like a special courtroom. The council room had elevated rows of seats that were meant for the members of the student council and observers to sit. Below the elevated seats, there was a space with a tall wooden chair placed in the middle which completed the very authoritative look. Akira glanced over to Tsubaki and received a nod. He stepped into the room towards the chair in the middle of the space and immediately felt gazes upon him. He looked up and saw all of the members of the student council assembled and sitting in the elevated seats. Akira slightly frowned as he didn't notice them before. Sit. An authoritative voice stated. Akira silently took a seat. That was when he saw the student council president herself, Sauna Shitori, in all her glory. She was sitting on her seat just a few feet away from the chair which Akira sat on and was staring at him with calculating eyes. Akira probably saw her the most out of the third years that weren't his friends. Oh right, she was also the third most popular girl in Kuo Academy's high school branch, above Tsubaki, but below Akino and Rias. Sauna, which he thought by his own opinion that would be drowned in many others if other students could invade his mind, was very attractive, and he'd be lying if he said he wasn't attracted to her. Sauna looked to be in her late teens just like all the other third years. She had short black hair in a bob cut, sharp calculating violet eyes, and a slim figure with modest-sized breasts. She wore her school uniform with a pair of black-rimmed, oval spectacles right over her face which helped her radiate a mature, dignified and intelligent aura. Akira-san, Sauna said coolly. Do you know why you are here? No. Such a response was shameless yet completely honest at the same time. I see. Sauna responded with a nod. Well, allow me to formally introduce myself, she said with a push of her glasses. While everyone in school knows me by the name Sauna Shitori, student council president, my real name is Sona Citri. Ah shit, everyone in this room but he and Morgana were devils, weren't they? At that moment a pair of wings, very similar to the ones that Rias had when she revealed herself as a devil, appeared on Sona's back. However, it wasn't just her. Everybody in the seats sprouted them as well. Akira leaned over and looked behind the chair at Tsubaki. She too had the black wings sprouting out of her back. Akira had just sat himself down in a room filled with devils and he had no idea if they were friends or foes. You're devils. Akira sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. This was either going to go well or be annoying like the times he and the others ended up being surrounded by shadows. So, what is it that you want? Despite his reaction seeming to be annoyed, he asked the question with complete indifference. You most likely already know what I'm going to offer you, Sona stated knowingly with a cross of her arms. The boy nodded. You want me to join your peerage, correct? As a knight. He then paused to think. Grimori-san told me about you, didn't she? He did his best not to deadpan. Correct. Sona nodded. Back to the topic at hand though. The recommended piece for you is a knight, she stated again. However, I also have a few pawns and a rook left. I can't imagine leaving it as something else. I'll just tell you what I told Grimori-san. I came into this world as a human. I can't imagine leaving it as something else. Understandable. Sona nodded. I will respect your wishes, but if you ever change your mind, you'll always have a place in my peerage. Thank you, Akira said as he started to get up out of his chair. Is that all? Can I go now? Sit. Akira resisted the urge to sigh as he sat down. This is for both you and Morgana-san, she said as she stared at the bag next to Akira. She watched as the black-haired boy stared at her for a couple of seconds. With a reluctant expression, he bent down and brought the bag to his lap. With a cat head popping out and shaking its own skull, she began to continue. Looks like the complaints of meowing coming from his bag were true after all. The two of you have entered a world that most of humanity is not aware of. As a student council president, it is my job to look after the students here in Kuo, so I can't allow you to proceed any further without properly informing you of the situation. Akira just stared as this was sounding so similar to Rias. But the next choice of words partially surprised him. I can tell that you don't trust me, the violet-eyed girl stated bluntly. I wouldn't trust me either if I were in your shoes. Her gaze sharpened as the two in her vision shared a look. However, I will tell you right now that what I say is the truth. All that I tell you will be explained to the best of my ability, I swear. And what incentive do we have to believe that? Morgana asked in a surprisingly defiant tone. Many of the student council members did a double take when hearing the cat talk. But a few gasped. Why would you help us? You're just a stranger, right? Explain to us why we should believe you. Because I don't want you to die. Such a reply that held much honesty made both Akira and Morgana blink in surprise. You were unfortunate enough to be dragged into this side of the world. You got involved not by your own choice, and if you died because of that, Rias and myself would feel responsible. She continued. Trust me, All I want to do is help. An everlasting silence seemed to fill the air as Akira and Morgana stared at Sona. Gray and blue orbs looked deeply into her violet ones before Morgana looked up. What do you think? I'll give her the chance and believe her. Akira nodded with sincerity. We may not like what we're about to hear, but I'll trust what she tells us is the truth. That is all I ask for. Sona replied with thanks being a silent word. I suppose I should start with the three factions. Go for it. Sona narrowed her eyes. Let's start with angels, she said as she knit her fingers together. Angels are the creation of the God of the Bible and are devil's most mortal enemies. A bit obvious, but he shouldn't judge. Angels are identified by their white wings, the halos around their heads, and their ability to project spears of light. Sona explained. Light is our weakness and their spears are very lethal to us devils. Morgana raised an eyebrow. Then that woman we fought at the park, she had black wings but could still make light spears. Is she a fallen angel? What happened for someone to become like that? You were correct about her being a fallen angel, Sona stated with a nod. A fallen angel is an angel that has performed a sinful act of some kind and has fallen from grace as a result. Just as Haru, Makoto, and Yusuke had predicted. But let's return to the heavens angels topic. Angels reside in heaven and their power is measured by the number of wings they possess. The most powerful angels are the archangels, and among them, Michael and Gabriel are the strongest. Just like his personas before, but he didn't bring that up. They, like us devils, suffered a considerable amount of causalities during the war. Morgana had a slight frown as a thought came to mind. If you devils invented the evil pieces to replenish your numbers, then how are the angels coping? That, I can honestly say, is something I have no clue about. Sona stated with a shake of her head. God of the Bible can simply create angels, but besides that I honestly have no idea how they are doing in terms of numbers. And the fallen angels? Akira asked curiously. They usually reside in the underworld along with devils due to being banished from heaven. She answered. They are essentially identical to normal angels with the exception of the black wings and the missing halo. They do, of course, follow a different leadership and have formed an organization called Grigori. What an ugly name, Akira stated. Morgana got back on topic. So, who leads them? The first angels that fell from heaven, Sona said coolly. The Grigori organization has several leaders, but one among them is the supreme leader that leads the whole faction. The Governor-General, Azazel. Akira nearly snorted at the fact that this grand leader held the same name as when Shadow Madarame fought him. Now, let me move on to devils. Sona began. Makes me wonder how much Grimoire-san left out about this subject considering the amount of details you're telling us right now. Morgana commented with his head leaning downwards. I am beginning to wonder that myself right now. Sona commented but still moved on. Devils reside in the underworld and possess bat-like wings, but there are some exceptions to that rule. Sona quickly flapped her wings. All devils possess superhuman strength and endurance, enhanced senses, and the ability called language, which allows us to understand any spoken language to us and for us to be understood by the speaker. Akira whistled lowly. Handy. It is. Sona nodded. In addition, devils can use magic like the other two factions. But, as I stated before, we devils have a weakness to light. Not only that, but we also have a weakness for holy and religious artifacts such as holy water. Didn't he make the Judge of the Dead revolver from Michael for Makoto and the Heaven's Gate automatic rifle from Uriel for Yusuke? Would those count as holy artifacts? It would probably be best for him to tell them not to pull out their guns against friendly devils. As for who leads our faction, they are the four great Mao. Sona added rather quickly. They are named Lucifer, Leviathan, Asmodeus, and Beelzebub, after the four original Satans. Right, the tyrant pistol made from Lucifer for him while Haru wielded the Fleur du Mal axe that was from Beelzebub's sacrifice. He had a feeling he was just digging his own grave in a sense somehow. So I take it the original four are dead? Morgana inquired. Yes, Sona answered without a second of hesitation. They were killed during the Great War. Now, we have four new Mao leading us. She paused for a second. Are you both familiar with the 72 Pillars? Morgana and Akira shook their heads. The 72 Pillars are clans of devils that did reside in the underworld. Rias and myself both come from such families. A cat head was tilted. Did reside. Unfortunately, that number was reduced to about 34 after the Great War. Sona informed begrudgingly. However, the number is actually higher than that, but mixed heritage makes some of the survivors of the war unable to be considered part of the 72 pillars. Only clans that have kept their heritage pure are still considered to be a part of the original 72 clans. She added the last sentence in complete distaste. Akira narrowed his eyes. If that war was enough to wipe out so many clans, why did mixing heritages matter? The only thing they should have been concerned about was making sure they didn't get wiped out. He could practically smell the prejudice surrounding the whole situation if such thing had a scent. Hey, Akira, feeling a shift in his legs, he looked down to see Morgana staring. You okay? Yes, are you all right? Sona was arching an eyebrow at him. It seemed that my last statement struck a nerve somewhere. It's nothing. Akira shook his head. Anyways, the 72 pillars are special only because of their standing, but also because of their clan-related abilities. Sona pointed out. For example, the Baal clan had the power of destruction, which releases explosive amounts of demonic energy to annihilate objects or enemies. She adjusted her glasses. But let us move on to another topic. I'm sure Rias failed to mention anything about stray devils. Not a word, Akira stated. Of course she didn't. The Violet Eyes president huffed. A stray devil is a devil that has either run away or killed his or her master. Without their master to keep their powers in check, their power will eventually grow beyond their control and become a threat. And if they become a threat? Morgana slowly asked, although he had a pretty good idea of what the answer would be. They are to be killed on the spot. Bingo. What if their master is abusive or they want to leave their master's service? Morgana continued to question. There is nothing they can do unless their master allows it. Akira looked down to see the look of disgust on the cat's face. Maybe we should move to a different topic. Very well. Sona nodded. While angels and fallen angels are quite dangerous enemies, so are the people known as exorcists. They are trained by the church and are equipped with light-based weaponry to destroy us. But what makes the exorcist so dangerous is that if one of them manages to exorcise a devil, the devil's whole existence is erased. Not even the soul is left. She paused to catch her breath. That is why we devils are very careful around them. However, when it comes down to it, light spears of the angels and fallen angels are much stronger and effective. There's more to it, isn't there? Akira asked. And you are correct, Sona answered. As with devils, there are stray exorcists as well. They are exorcists that either broke a doctrine of the church, or simply went insane and became indiscriminate killers who don't care who, or what they kill. Got it, Akira nodded. Anything else? Sona tapped her chin in thought. Well, there are still the topics of sacred gears and magicians. Magicians. Now that was a word that caught Akira and Morgana's attention. Grimoire-san did tell us a bit about sacred gears. Is that right? Sona questioned with flat stare. She only told you basic information, didn't she? Most likely. Sona slapped her face with her palm at Akira's answer. I should have known. She massaged her temples seemingly in annoyance. She's as irresponsible as ever. This seemed to make Akira chuckle a bit. The way you talk to her makes me think the two of you are best friends. A friend, Sona corrected Akira. Still counts. The teen replied with a shrug of his shoulders. Right. Sona coughed into her hand. Before I move on to the subject, could I ask you for a favor? Could you show us this persona that Rias has mentioned? A bit long chapter for my tastes. I did intend for the Velvet Room scene and the Student Council scene to be in the same chapter. But they both turned out to be longer than expected, so I had to cut the latter short. Finally beat Persona 5. Happy that I got legitimate compliments and complaints in my reviews that didn't whine about the power levels without good reason. Also, I didn't realize that this story has been out for over a month. Wow, time really flies when busy. No flames please. Chapter 5. I do not own the Persona series or High School DxD. Everything belongs to their respected owners. Akira sat still, his face straight as usual as he thought about his next choice of words carefully. But Morgana managed to beat him to the punch as the cat had an answer already at the ready. Yeah, sure we can. Just give me a second to help this guy to remember the basics of the basics. Leaping up to his shoulder, Morgana then jumped into the air as well. Witness my persona, Zoro. Akira was about to say something but then remembered. He was trying to pretend to make it seem like his power of a persona were just new to him. So, since it was agreed that Morgana would do most of the talking when it came down to the subject, he had to act as if the entire ordeal was completely a subject he had no knowledge in. Something that would be a giant pain to remember. With a spin and somehow managing to flourish. In the air, a large silhouette began to take the form of something rather big. Not even a second passed as suddenly it erupted into reality with such a large body standing proudly in the center of the room. Akira nearly had to lean back due to how much space the persona was taking up. Apparently at the same time, Morgana had turned into his humanoid form as he landed on his 2 feet and stood proudly right in front of his audience. Silence followed, and it was not really predicted, although there were exclamations of surprise which both phantom thieves saw coming. "What the hell is that?" Saji managed to eloquently put all of their thoughts into one simple question, a bit more improper but still similar. "Zoro," Akira said easily and slowly. "Zoro," Sona parroted the black-haired persona user with equal speed as her bespectacled eyes looked at Akira's own pupils. "You are talking about the secret identity of the fictional character Don Diego de la Vega, I assume. The masked outlaw who defended commoners and indigenous people against tyrannical officials and other villains." She looked down, not even wanting to bother thinking about the sudden change in Morgana's appearance unless she wanted to get off topic and forget the purpose of why they were even here in the first place. "I can see the figure wearing his signature mask and hat, but I never expected him to look like this." Morgana scratched the back of his head, seeming a bit sheepish that he may have just ruined the image of such an amazing figure for someone who may have been a fan. That may be my bad," he slowly began, getting a look from the student council president. "You see, I don't really like how my name is feminine. Also don't like being called a cute cat. So, since I want to be viewed more like a man, that is the reason why Zoro's appearance pretty masculine." Its entire, muscular body seemed to shake with the hat as if the persona was nodding in confirmation. Sona then noticed a couple of things as she peered down to Morgana once more. "What are those supposed to be?" Her eyes fell upon some kind of blade that had the curved end of an axe but the body of a medieval sword. The hilt and handle of the sword were yellow in a color that represented gold. The shape was similar to a 4-sided star that would shine in the sky as curved lines connect the points that were adjacent with one another to complete a circle, while the handle had a diamond shape at the end. On the flat sides of the blade, however, was also something that caught Sona's eye. More diamond designs lined up with one another vertically between halfway and 3/4 up the blade. For the first quarter of the blade, a long, thick, golden line was at the end of one of the shapes and connected itself with the star that was on the handle. Near the tip part, fitting around the arc-curved end, was an even larger diamond with some kind of design carved into it. But next to it was an item that she was unsure of what it was. To her it was some kind of crucifix that was the size of Morgana's humanoid body. But what made the golden weapon different from a normal cross was that there was a gigantic hole in the middle of such an object which made it larger than it should be. With the 2 ends that were horizontally connected with the hole, golden chains presented themselves linked to a leather pad. Due to that one part, with a mixture of interest and a puzzled feeling, she concluded that the weapon was supposed to be some kind of slingshot. It was not only the designs of the weapons, however, it was what kind of presence they had. Morgana looked down and eyed the weapons that she was talking about. His jaw nearly dropped as his pupils fell upon the weapons that had been given to him from Akira when the human exited the velvet room a couple of times. The blade's name was Clone Soleil, the large sword given its birth from the sacrifice made by Mother Harlot. Then there was the slingshot which, despite its shape, was not related to any sort of biblical figure at all. No, Sudarshana was gifted thanks to Koryu, the yellow dragon. "No way," the humanoid feline exclaimed in excitement as he touched Sudarshana with a hint of nostalgia before it suddenly disappeared. But that did not seem to form any kind of negativity in the cat as he immediately began to lift Clone Soleil in both of his hands. Laughing to himself, he then began to remember who he was surrounded by. Looking over to Akira, the boy seemed to have an amused look on his face. When Morgana turned his head to Sona, the female had a look that was blank but partially demanded an explanation. "Sorry," the cat trailed off, trying to quickly come up with an excuse to why he was acting so excited. "It's just that, I would usually use a normal scimitar and slingshot. But since these are here, they're technically replacements for it. That was not a very good explanation in the slightest at all. Either Sona knew that Morgana was lying but did not pry, or she was that convinced over his words. Most likely the former, since she was the student council president after all. Looking over to Akira, she stared. What about you, Akira-san? May I get to see your persona? Akira looked over at Morgana and thought about it. But showing off arson was probably going to be a giant risk, with him exposing a few things. He would appear in his phantom thief clothing, which was not the problem. Since Morgana immediately was equipped with his own weapons fueled by the power of a specific persona, that would mean that Akira himself would have his tyrant pistol in Paradise Lost. It wouldn't have been a problem before, but something was shown in Sona's eyes and everyone else in the room with a shiver of their bodies that they sensed powerful presences. Since there were the four great Mao, the feeling of Lucifer would place him under complete suspicion. Not only that, Satanel's presence, he just didn't want to think about it. Not to mention that Arson's black wings could have him be depicted as him summoning a fallen angel. Would it be okay if I said no? Akira asked. If Sona was disappointed or suspicious, she didn't show it. Now that Akira thought about it, the girl actually kept her own emotions in check pretty well, since it was probably a mandatory thing in the school position she was in. I understand if you prefer not to, she answered before placing a hand to her chin. Now where was I again? Magicians and sacred gears. Ah, yes, Sona coughed, nodding in thanks to Akira's reminder. A persona that possesses a sacred gear is usually not even aware that he or she even has one. It lies dormant inside of them until it is awakened. Morgana had a thoughtful look on his face before turning back into a cat and having Zoro disappear at the same time. Then what awakens them? He asked as he leapt onto Akira's leg and hopped onto the boy's shoulder. That depends on the situation and conditions really. Some people awaken it during times of great distress, while others can learn how to do it. Sona replied, her face slightly scrunched up to come up with sentences that were simple. There are many different varieties of sacred gears and each one has their own strengths, so that might have a role in how and when it activates. Well, that's inconvenient. Among the various types of sacred gears, the Longinus type are the rarest ones. Sona stated, narrowing her eyes slightly at Akira's comment. There are 13 of the Longinus type in total, and they each possess enough power to kill a god. Kill a god. Akira remembered blowing a giant hole right in the middle of Yaldabaoth's face. Good times aside, did that mean that he had the power of a Longinus type sacred gear? Most likely. Finally, magicians. Sona began. Magicians are humans that have learned the spells of at least one of the various factions of supernatural beings. This gives them a wide range of abilities, limited only by their own knowledge and skill level. The whole magic system that they currently use was developed by Merlin Ambrosius, a man who once studied demonic power and devil's magic. Besides that, nothing much else is currently known about them. This was a really long explanation. Thankfully, Futaba would already get the recording and go over it to grab all of the key parts that mattered, at least when the girl would be in the mood for it. Nothing else is known, Akira asked, hoping to get more information on the topic. Well, there is a rumor that there was a magician that predated to be Merlin, which I can't confirm or deny. The black-haired girl tensed slightly. The same rumor also says that this same magician may still be alive. Morgana tensed slightly as well to the information. And who is this guy? I do not know, since it is just a rumor which, as I stated before, I cannot confirm or deny. Listening for a bit, there was nothing but silence between them. Am I free to go now? Akira asked, getting a small nod from Sona. Getting off his chair, Akira felt Morgana hop off his shoulder and make his way to the bag. Well, thanks for the explanation, Citri-san. I really appreciate it. Hanging the bag on his shoulder, Morgana's head popped out slightly before hiding again as Akira walked away. One last thing. Akira quickly stopped and turned around to see Sona's gaze. You should know that dragons exist as well, but I personally don't know much about them other than that they are powerful and not to be trifled with. He kind of did that when he chose Koryu to be the living sacrifice to the electric chair. Also, if you ever have any other questions regarding anything, please do not hesitate to ask. That is all. Actually, I have a question I'd like to ask, Citri-san. Morgana's blue eyes could be seen within the darkness of Akira's handbag, such a sentence slightly surprising Sona due to how fast her offer was taken. What are yours and Romori-san's clan abilities? Rias is actually part of both the Bale and Romori clans. She inherited the power of destruction from her mother who originally came from Bale, and superior magic control from her father who was Romori. Sona explained. The Citri, my clan, specialized in water magic. That interesting. Thank you for being so informative, Citri-san. Akira nodded in gratitude and quickly left the student council room, leaving all its members alone. Sona sighed as she leaned back in her chair. She was definitely going to need something to help her relax after finishing today's word. Right when Morgana summoned his persona, she felt that something was off about those weapons. She couldn't quite place a finger on it, but there was definitely something strange about them. There was also the fact that Akira didn't want to summon his own persona. But from what Rias had told her, the persona had black wings and was named Arsène. Arsène, wasn't that a character created by French writer Maurice Leblanc? Not only that, there was also Zorro. Did that mean that all personas are named after fictional characters? No, there had to be more to it. Akira was certainly an interesting individual, but there was something else that concerned her. She began to build up on that weird feeling everyone Akira's group. If her theory was correct, then that meant everyone from Shujin Academy, or at least the group from Tokyo, had a persona. Then, such a thought made her think. Everyone, she managed to grab all of their attention. I need you all to do some research. See if any sort of suspicious activity ever occurred in Tokyo. Just as everyone spread out to get to work, Sona prepared her own laptop while she sighed deeply. She really wished she had some coffee or tea right about now. Take a break. The late afternoon sun shined down as a cool breeze cruised through the air. The afternoon rush had just ended and everyone was getting back where they belonged. Well, most of them. The end of the afternoon rush also meant the beginning of the evening rush. The coffee's finished, get that ready. Next is table number 6, a order of strawberry lemonade with a house special coffee. Someone just asked for a refill by the counter on your right. That kid's parents are asking for some more napkins. Currently, Akira was behind the counter of Neko no Mai's, preparing all of the different drinks that had been ordered by the customers with Morgana calling out the customers' needs. This place was a hot spot for customers though looking for a quick and quality meal or even just to hang out. However, due to the whole place also having the feature of interacting with cats, the number of customers was considerably high. Not only that, but today was a random day that all the workers had to wear cat ears. For some reason, such an accessory had a magnetic effect on people. Thankfully though, help soon arrived and his workload was decreased by a good few levels. Wow, it's a good thing you're so proficient. Guess all that time making tools and spending time with IY really paid off. Morgana commented as Akira nodded while the human flexed his fingers. The cat was still in the bag and was set up along a counter right behind Akira and quickly peered over. Looks like we got more company. Soon though, the entire occult research club walked right through the cafe's main entrance, which meant that either they were going here for a nice meal or they were going to talk to him. The group made their way over to the counter that Akira was working behind and sat down on the counter chairs, right in front of him. Grabbing a few menus, he gave each of them one. What are you doing here? Akira inquired, without a second of hesitation. Just checking in, Rias stated with a small smile and a shrug. So, I heard that you were contacted by Sona. She pulled up the menu and began reading it but still kept an ear open. Akira nodded and went back to mixing coffee. I was, he answered. And, Rias asked anxiously. He turned her down. Morgana replied, almost answering flatly. He's already said it, but he doesn't plan on giving up his humanity anytime soon, if ever. Akira glanced at Rias and saw her bite her lip. It was clear as day that she didn't like the second half of Morgana's answer. His eyes then shifted to the side to see Akino giggling about something, which Akira guessed was about Rias getting rejected before she could even bring up her offer to join her peerage again. It was one of those things that made Akino a very off-putting person. The other reasons being with the way she talked and acted made Akira feel like she was trying to hide something. Maybe it was just his imagination. Suddenly, Issei stood up and pointed at Morgana. The cat is talking. Why is the cat talking? It's better not to ask, Akira stated, placing his hand against the top of Morgana's head. But to his surprise, the feline didn't attempt to pounce. That was when Issei then looked over to Akira. You're Kurusu Senpai, right? You're friends with Takamaki Senpai and Nijima Senpai, right? Akira wondered why he remembered only half of the girls' names that was in his group. Then again, it was pretty much those two who would attempt to discipline them at times. Mainly and since Makoto would only come onto high school grounds once in a while. Yes, that would be me. Issei hummed, scratching his chin curiously. There seems to be something off about you. Rias, Akano, and even Kiba snickered while a short girl with white hair and Akira just gave them a flat look. Surely, Issei was not that stupid. Did the brunette really not see the cat ears on his head? That was probably the worst and most cliché joke Akira had heard all year. Akira placed a hand on the teen's shoulder. Meow, he stated with a straight face. Okay. Issei slowly trailed off in confusion and quickly sat down to read the menu. The gray-eyed teen nodded. But then his attention was grabbed by someone. Excuse me, Akira-senpai, said teen looked over to see Kiba giving him a smile. Are those cat ears you are wearing? Yes, Akira admitted shamelessly with a completely neutral face. Cat ears are cool. Kiba laughed while the white-haired girl nodded in agreement with him apparently. I can't say that I agree, the blonde commented. Akira blinked while staring at Kiba. Now that he thought about it, this was just one of the few times that he had actually seen Kiba in person. The description that Yusuke provided thanks to the girls from the Kendo Club gave him was surprisingly accurate. Actually, most of the information the blue-haired teen provided him was pretty spot on, especially when it came to people they admired. He got everything from his slightly above average height, to his handsome looks, to his gray eyes, to the mole under his left eye. Even Yusuke was impressed with the attention to detail there. The girls of the Kendo Club knew that they were talking about. He then noticed the white-haired girl staring at Morgana. Cat, she said quietly, keeping her eyes locked on Morgana's. Do you want to pet him? Akira asked. Seeing the female nod, he looked over at his feline companion. Fine, I suppose it's okay. Morgana sighed as Akira carried the bag over the gap between the counter and his workspace. Hearing the zipper become undone, the cat was surprised to feel the perfect amount of strength used in the first stroke. Not only that, the girl was also petting all of the right places. Akira didn't say anything when he heard Morgana purring. He then remembered something. You know, Grimori-san, Akira started off. Citri-san told me a lot of stuff that you failed to mention. Rias laughed nervously. Why yeah, I know that you must have had your reasons. Akira stated evenly. So that is why. He raised his index finger. I ask you to be straight with me down the line from now on. Everyone blinked at the request. Honestly, they expected Akira to at least be a bit peeved. But for him to be rather cooperative despite the secrets was a pleasant surprise. So does that mean? Rias asked anxiously. Akira smiled. Not on your life, Grimori-san. Rias pouted and puffed out her cheeks. You're no fun. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the entrance doors open. Looking over, he saw that the rest of the phantom thieves had entered and were walking right towards the part of the counter he was manning. He was thankful for their company, but this was also putting more work onto his plate at the same time. Yo, how's work been going? Ryuji asked as walked right behind the Occult Research Club and stared right at Akira. Not bad, Akira answered, immediately getting his current customers at the counter to look behind them and see that the unknown phantom thieves were surrounding them. It was pretty busy at first, but it eventually began to lighten up with more help. He gestured to the other workers that were dealing with a couple of other customers. What are you all doing here? Do you not remember Akira-chan? Haru asked, causing the trickster to tilt his head and have a thoughtful expression on his face. The heiress of the food company giggled at how cute Akira looked with such a look. Today we agreed on eating out. But with the sudden change in Akira-chan's schedule, we thought that we would go to where you work and hope that we could catch you on a break. Peeking out from behind the entire group since she was the shortest, Futaba's eyes drifted around in curiosity until she had her gaze set upon someone who she was familiar with. Ah, Kaneko-chan. Popping out from the surrounding bodies, the orange-haired girl immediately grabbed a seat to set herself right up next to the white-haired girl. "How've you been?" "Fine." Kaneko nodded, looking over to Futaba. "And you?" "Oh, you know, same old same old." Futaba bobbled her head back and forth. "So this is the Kaneko character that you've been telling us about?" Yusuke stated, looking down at the two short girls. "It seems that you are both nearly of the same stature." Kaneko and Futaba seemed to glare right at the blue-haired teenager, the former also seeming to pout by puffing her cheeks out. "Boo," Futaba drawled out in a disapproving tone. "You're a meanie, perverted Inari." "Moron," Kaneko added. "You take that comment back." Yusuke raised his voice slightly as he was not one to really yell. "In no way am I even close to such an absurd and repulsive title." "Oh, looks like you've taken a liking to Morgana-chan as well." Futaba quickly looked down and saw that Kaneko was still petting the cat in a comforting fashion. Everyone else watching them just sweat dropped at the sudden change in attention. "Anyways," Anne slowly said to get everyone back on track. "I didn't expect you to be here, Grimori-san. Also with your entire club." The male blonde opened his mouth. "Were you talking about da?" Anne smacked Ryuji right on top of the head. "Right, that reminds me. What did you need to talk to Akira about anyways the other day?" Ryuji asked, rubbing the sore spot while glaring at Anne. "That's a secret," Akino sang once again. Ryuji sighed, bending his head and back forward. "Of course. Why don't we start ordering some food?" Makoto asked as she sat down next to Futaba. Oh, I want my usual." Futaba raised one of her hands, the other one poking Morgana's cheek. "Same for me," Ryuji exclaimed as he sat down. "I think that goes for all of us," Yusuke commented, grabbing a stool. "Yeah," Anne agreed, taking a spot. "It's especially wonderful when Akira-chan makes it," Haru added. "I think we all know what we want then." Makoto smiled. Akira nodded his head, already memorizing the orders. Plus, he was supposed to switch with one of the people in the kitchen soon since it was a massive order and he was good at multitasking. "What about you guys?" he asked, looking over towards the Occult Research Club members. "I think I'll try the house special curry, with a medium-sized latte, single shot." Rias began handing over her menu. Era, it's as if we had the same idea, Bucho." Akino commented, implying that her order was the same as Rias. "I'll try the butter chicken with a summer breeze drink please." Kiba pointed out the items on the menu as Akira nodded and wrote it down. "Kaneko-chan, you should try what I'm having. It'll taste super yummy," Futaba commented to the white-haired girl. "Okay." The small girl nodded. "As for Issei, so much to choose from," the brunette muttered to himself before finding something that looked appealing. "I'll have the voodoo vindaloo." Everyone at the counter, including the workers that were within earshot, all slowly turned their heads towards Issei with surprised expressions on their face. The boy meanwhile was confused with all of the looks he was getting. Is there something wrong with what I'm ordering?" "Issei-kun." Rias took it slowly. "I think the name may imply. Thank you for your orders. Please wait for your food." Akira nodded his head and headed straight into the kitchen. For a solid few minutes, the Occult Research Club minus Kaneko due to being distracted by Morgana, and the Phantom Thieves minus Futaba due to being distracted by Morgana, both tried to find a way to break it down for Issei what their thoughts were on such a name of the dish he ordered. But the boy seemed so eager to try it out they didn't have the heart to tell him. Soon, everyone got their specific ordered dishes as Akira swiftly brought them each a plate that was filled with steaming food. "Right, time to dig in," Issei exclaimed, his curry plate looking rather normal, being portioned with a curry sauce on top of rice and some chicken. There was some kind of green substance on the side of the plate, but it tasted as equally delicious as he began scarfing down the meal. No one else touched their food and the workers stopped what they were doing as the brunette eagerly chewed his food. But then the movement of his jaw began to slow down. He was only a quarter way done with his food and his happy look grew into one of confusion. A full-blown disturbed expression immediately morphed onto his features as he looked up towards Akira. "I feel like I'm having a baby. The trick is to eat it before the rice dissolves," the trickster replied, gesturing down to the food. "So a few things to get out of the way. First, this chapter was supposed to come out earlier but there was work. Second, The chapter was supposed to come earlier, but I made a Persona RWBY crossover, so check that out if you'd like. Third, the chapter was supposed to come earlier, but then I had no idea what Morgana's weapons were supposed to be. So, despite the power of the internet, there are no official images of the ultimate weapons, so it took some time to not only create the weapons, blaze right through New Game Plus, but also try to place Morgana in that perfect position so that I can write a proper description of the weapons. It even took nearly an hour to try and find out what the blade he was using was called, but I couldn't find any matches. Fourth, hopefully that's all the exposition out of the way, for the moment. No flames please.